Hello, everybody, and welcome to the media show on the Pod TV network. I'm your host, Nick Palavita, and today we're going to be discussing the election, which is a big thing that's hitting the media, otherwise known today predominantly Trump versus Biden. And with that, for those who are joining us from the Economics with Honorable David M. Walker, we're going to bring in Rick Rosner, who, since we had a full house at the earlier stage, we didn't have much time to discuss.
That's okay. You limited my nonsense. That's fine.
Oh, good. Well, the thing is, my nonsense was I've only read third-party sources, but I'm going to first got to find a first-party source dealing with the budget, or not even the budget. It's that $1.2 trillion act. And the thing is, even today, it just bothers me because you have to put it in context. Context number one. Social Security and Medicare go broke. Medicare going broke this decade, Social Security next decade. Number two, the U.S. debt 33 trillion, but it adds like, a trillion every 100 days. So I think it's over 34 trillion, plus Medicare and Social Security all going broke. Now, number three, which is very interesting, I'll just put that down, that Pod TV had over 2.3 million views in 2023. But here's the problem I have. Which I can't wait till these people get on this. The interest on the debt is our largest expense. So now you put it in context. Now we already know there's the big items which we're blowing money on, which is what David Walker says is the big picture. One is the PPP loans. They forgave almost $700 billion to corporations, including, I believe, my corporation, who collected huge amounts of money and didn't do anything. Now, I'm not 100% sure because I don't run my company anymore, but at the same time, it was sort of a disgrace. The other disgrace is student loan forgiveness. I mean, the other day we looked into a university. You can go to medical school and not have to pay any student loans. You go to medical school for free. So I'm not very sympathetic with the student loans and people that have them at this point in time. But yeah, Rick, we're gonna bring in.
John Oliver, his latest episode, he does a half-hour show where he all on one subject, and he was this one from a couple days ago was all on student loans. And yeah, maybe it's unfair that people get but the people who administer the loans are predatory and incompetent. There's a program. 2 million people are under a program where if you do public service, if you're a teacher or a fireman or a cop or working you're supposed to be able to make payments on your loan. If you're a public servant doing, helping society with cop, fire, whatever, you're supposed to get the remainder of your loan forgiven after 20 years.
Okay, but if we put
only 32 people out of 2 million have ever had their loans discharged. The loan companies are a-holes and they don't give a crap. So
yeah, but if we also put into context, here's what happened, which the American public isn't aware of. The BACPA, and a lot of people didn't read this act, it's called the Bankruptcy Abuse and Consumer Protection Act of 2005. Go look it up. It was the first law passed that said student loans are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. For years, they were dischargeable in bankruptcy. Then you got to lay this on the Republicans and the Democrats because they both voted to allow student loans not to be dischargeable. If you want to solve this problem, go back and eliminate this section of BACPA, make it dischargeable in bankruptcy. So if somebody says my student loans are so overwhelming, I can't do anything, file bankruptcy and get them discharged. And then the loan company eats it and they have to be more realistic as to who they lend money to. But this you can lay on the fault of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party for passing this act.
The fault of the choice between Biden and Trump is not a choice about the budget because they're both terrible at reducing the national debt. Trump, is America's worst businessman. He's got a 50-year history of bad decisions, and he exploded the deficit by giving a huge corporate and billionaire tax cut, and so which is I mean, that's what the Republicans do. They give tax cuts to rich people, explodes
Right.
the deficit. Democrats spend a ton of money on, public programs, also explodes the deficit. So you can't vote for president based on who's gonna. The last president, as we know, to fix the budget was Clinton 30 years ago.
That's correct. Clinton was the last one to do it. But when you put in context how broke you are, here we have this 1.2 million in Pride Center. So I got to explain to my great-great-grandchildren the reason you have to work your butt off and the reason why you can't buy a home, the reason why groceries are so expensive is there was a Pride Center bought for people in New York City. Bad idea, bad deal. It's an earmark. Here's another one. $3 billion to the Palo Alto History Museum. Another bad earmark. $3 billion. We don't need look, if the people in Palo Alto want to do a history museum, I don't have any problem with it, but we shouldn't pay for it. Here's another thing we shouldn't pay for. 1.2 million to DACA. Look, that's not our problem. Give them nothing. Then there's another problem. 1 million to the Zora House for gender issues. Maybe they can't identify their gender. That's not the federal government's problem. That's their problem. Here's another earmark. 3 million to LGBTQ in New York City. Now, Sasha is a chess player, and so am I. And I can tell you a sweet story with the University of South Florida chess team. When we won the Pan American, I went to our student government. They gave us $6,000. Next year, they zeroed us out. Well, actually, they gave us like $2,000 because they wanted to send all the money to the LGBT community. And I'm going like, dude, the chess community doesn't get anything but LGBT community. They don't need it. It's not our problem. It's their problem. They can go deal with it. And then we have also
play and drag. Say you're trans. All you play and drag. All you have to say you're trans. And
I know. See, chess players are horrible at politics. I was able to get money for our chess team at South Florida, but chess players are nerdy. They don't know how to play the political game, and so what happens is the LGBT community just basically ripped off all our money. And it went there, and it didn't go to the chess community. The chess community is horrible at getting money from anyone.
I was once offered a job if I would go trans, and I could be a diversity hire. And I'm like, fine, I'll dress to get a good job. I will wear my wife's clothes to work. And they said, oh no, you got to lose the penis. And I'm like, nope, that's too far.
3.6 million to the Michelle Obama Trail in Georgia. If this isn't to buy votes, I don't know what is. What happens if they named it the Jimmy Carter Trail? But I don't even care whose trail it is. It's not the federal government's business.
Right. So all these examples are from the New York Times article you cited that found $15 billion worth of pork in a $1.2 trillion spending bill. If there's only 15, that's only $1.80 that's pork. If you could,
but the estimates could be as high as $50 billion. But it has, to me, it also has nothing to do with.
That's 4%. If you found it,
hold on a second.
I'm almost to my point. If you found a charity that only spent 4% of its budget on BS, that would be a great charity.
Nick, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Nick, hold on a second. Because you know that I work for a couple of cultural institutions that get some money from the government. So definitely the Hayti Center, the Durham Arts Council, the Carolina Theater, and the DPAC.
Which government did they get it from?
Also get money from the federal government as well. So you're saying that the Carnegie Hall doesn't need to get any money because that's
Carnegie Hall does not need the $1 million. Absolutely, Mark. And the federal government should not be funding the Hayti Center. If the federal government's funding the Hayti Center, that's just bloody wrong. And we shouldn't be giving $750,000.
A lot of these organizations require money from both the federal and the state and several other local levels.
It's a state function. It's a state or city function. The people in Ames, Iowa, should not be funding the Hayti Center in Durham. I'm sorry.
No, okay, so the thing is, you're getting federal funding organizations that are national organizations like the NEA and a number of other ones, the Humanities Council and a number of others that are national organizations, and they give money, and if that money is earmarked for it to go to different organizations, including the NPN, which is National Performance Network and everything, then yes, they can get some of that money. And yes, they have gotten federal money, they've gotten state money, they've gotten a number of other forms of money, and I have no problem with that. I did have a question.
I have no problem with the state money. I have no problem.
This is actually a question for Sasha, because Sasha, you're into the stock spaces and you're into the stock market, and this media story came down, and I know that Nick is going to love this one. as well, because apparently the appeals court agreed to reduce the $464 million judgment against Donald Trump to $175 million. But apparently now he is about to trade on the stock market. So I know that your friend Milan is big onto the stock market, but DJT is going to be a stock that you can get. So you can actually get money under that ticker symbol. I don't know anybody's going to be invested in DJT, but apparently it is now a stock symbol. So Donald Trump is now a part of the New York Stock Exchange. So what is your thoughts about this? The fact that you can now have DJT stock on the New York stock market, because he has just now become a stock symbol. And like I said, I don't know what it's trading at. You follow that trend more than I do and everything. But apparently that is some good news that former President Donald Trump got, which is that he is now got a stock exchange that has got his name on it, DJT stock, and you can so Donald J. Trump, you can actually get your NASDAQ. I'm thinking that you're going to just be rushing to get that stock, Sasha. But what is your thoughts around this DJT stock on the stock market?
Okay, before we go to the issue, let me comment on the judge, the appeal court decision about
who did a remitter?
The amount of bond to $175 million. It's an elegant decision because there was a lot of talk on social media and everywhere else that this is a revenge of left on Donald Trump, and they're bringing unthinkable conditions on the bond or so on. Okay, all of that now becoming a garbage because $175 million, it's a relatively small amount for Donald Trump. He can write check in a matter of probably 5 to 10 minutes, including
probably could.
Signature. Yeah, he's good for this money, that's for sure. I mean, if he doesn't have that money, we're wasting our time on him. Of course, he has this money, so he will have $175 million left, less than before, but that's okay. Because the decision there of appeal, he will lose appeal 100%, and he will pay all the money anyway. So now they're taking him apart. It's like a slow death mechanism. No, we're not going to kill you right away. We'll take your 175. We already took your 100 million on this writer. What's her name? Is whom he raped?
Eugene Carroll.
Eugene Carroll. Okay.
Eugene Carroll.
So he raped and defamed poor writer Eugene Carroll. He paid for it $100 million. Okay, now he'll pay another 175 for this. So it's 275. It's not a big deal for Trump with his billions of dollars, but it's okay. The people of New York still will be happy. Now coming to his famous stock play. You know, when the last time Trump been on the public market, it was his famous casinos in Atlantic City, where people lost everything, whatever they had on that stock, it went down to zero. So they lost everything. Here is another one. It will take, in my estimation, it will take probably a few months, because what's happening now is they have 6 months lock period. So in a way, stock should run higher simply because there are no sellers, because the insiders cannot sell. So maybe they have some friendly brokers who will allow a short sell, and of course brokers themselves will heavily short the stock as much as the idiots will buy the stock. Now, what's behind that stock? Do you understand what's this corporation? What is their
it's supposed to be his media company, so it's the stock with his media company. So it's actually the stock of True Social and their new merger. So it is supposed to be stock of his media company. So that is the specific business of his that is on the stock market. It is the
excellent. Well, thank you so much for help. Okay, here's to understand. There were the SPAC. A vehicle which is a checkbook. It has no business whatsoever. It has some money that it raised from all kinds of idiots at $10 a piece. So intrinsic value of that company on the best is $10, but it's much less because they had to spend a lot of money in legal bills and to prepare all the financial statements or so. So it's much less than $10. I'm wondering it's probably between $3 and $4. That's what left in SPAC. Okay, here comes a real company, the Trump Media and Technology, how they call it. So what is the revenue of that company? Anybody knows? There's the revenue of Twitter, which was quite questionable, public company, now it's private, was about $1 billion. Okay. Now this company total revenue is less than $1 million. Okay. So it's a real piece of nothing. Now, if nothing equals to zero, then the piece of nothing is even less valuable, because all this company can do, there is no profit, there is hardly any revenue. So it will bleed all these remaining $3-4 per share, what the SPAC has. And that's the end of story. So they will do private placements here and there. Okay, they will raise some, probably $1 billion here and there. But it will all go down the drain because the company is stillborn baby. That's all what it is. And all the people, in a matter of the latest 9 months, because it will take it up to election, and at election time it will just go down to zero.
So this is called a meme stock, which is a stock that's supported by fanaticism, like GameStop. A bunch of people decided GameStop should be propped up, should be worth, and if enough people get together to support a stock, you can keep the value up for a while just based on, a shared delusion. And certainly MAGA people are deluded enough to keep the stock price up for a while. For Trump to pull any money out of the deal, the stock has to maintain at least 50% of its value for 6 months. Can they keep it inflated for that long? I don't know.
It's possible. Actually, it's possible because if, as I said, the stock is restricted, so there are no sellers. So if there will be even insignificant number of buyers and no sellers, we all know what's happening in this case. The stock will go higher, especially with the help of crazies and Trump supporters and lovers and all kind of other useful idiots. So the stock will go higher.
Speaking of useful idiots, there's another useful idiot that's up there in Florida and all in that space. But apparently, Florida will have one of the country's most restrictive social media bans for minors if it withstands its expected legal challenges under the bill signed by Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis today. So he actually signed the bill today, and the ban will ban social media accounts for children under 14 and require parental permission for 15 and 16-year-olds. And they do say that it was watered down from the proposal that DeSantis vetoed earlier this month, a week before the usual legislative system ends. But definitely looks like they're going to stop kids from being on social media, and definitely they're going to try to see how this works, because several states have considered similar legislation. In Arkansas, a federal judge blocked enforcement of the law in August that required parental consent for minors to create new social media accounts. I see we're joined by Jacoby and everything, and Jacoby's got young people in his life. I don't think any are that age, even though my nephews are that age. What are your thoughts around this notion of social media being banned by unless parents are consenting? Because apparently that's something that they're trying to do in Florida, because they're saying that they hope the bill will withstand legal challenges because it would ban social media formats based on addictive features such as notification alerts and autoplay videos rather than on their content. So y'all's thoughts around this notion of restricting social media for our young people?
You have to unmute, Jacoby. Okay.
I mean, it's I don't know about an outright ban, but yes, social media is very detrimental to a lot of young people, especially if they overuse it. In terms of an outright ban, I mean, there are a lot of things you can outright ban for kids. So
kids will get around it. When I was a kid, I liked Playboy magazine. I egged my friends into stealing it from a grocery store for me because I was too chicken to do it myself. We'd go dumpster diving for Playboy magazines outside fraternity houses because so kids will figure out how to get what they want.
Well, I'm curious how they're going to enforce that. What are you going to do? Are you going to arrest the parents? Are you going to arrest the kids? Are you going to fine the parents? I mean, I understand what they're trying to do, but seriously, how are you going to effectively enforce this law in Florida, where you're going to restrict the children from reaching that? Talk to me. How's this going to be enforced?
It's not. I mean, the only way, you can try and set it up with the internet companies and have the internet companies track IP addresses. However, they make things like VPNs, and kids are great using VPNs right now, which is a virtual private network where you can basically hop and it makes your computer look like it's in anywhere else besides Florida. So there are tons of ways around it.
So what you're telling me, Jatovia, in reality, they're going to pass a law that will restrict minors from accessing the internet, but they have no accessing social media, but they have no methodology to enforce it. Would that be correct, Counselor?
It'll just restrict.
That is correct. This is just a symbolic bill. That's all.
This is all garbage. It's just all.
Yeah, but the silver lining is, if you're sick of Florida doing these garbage like bills to own the libs, to do this, DeSantis is done being governor in 2026. So if you can hang on for another year, because of term limit, and don't elect his crazy wife governor to replace him.
You think Floridians would be smarter than that? Because I think DeSantis is a really smart idiot. He did go to Yale Law School, but all his moves on the chessboard are absolutely horrible.
No, they have some horrible moves.
The thing is,
it's just a complete.
What they could have done, where they could have actually done a lot of regulations in partnership with the social media companies to get to actually help deter kids, but they didn't do that. They did the whole symbolic thing, and I'm afraid to say that, when you said Floridians are not too dumb to elect it, well, they did elect Ron DeSantis twice.
I know. I'm sitting there.
They elected him twice. But speaking of which, there is a new phenomenon that is out there, and I was reading an article in, I believe it's Axios or along those lines, but I'm going to just kind of give y'all a short summary of what this story is, because it's something that you talk about quite a bit, Nick, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this. But folks are saying that we can't understand the November election or America itself without reckoning with how our media attention has shattered into bunches of misshapen pieces. They are calling it the shards of glass phenomenon. Not long ago, we saw news and information through the few common windows, TV, newspaper, cable. Now we find it in scattered chunks that match our age, habits, politics, and passion. And this is right up your alley, Rick, because it says traditional media, at least as a center of dominant power, is dead. Social media as its replacement for news in the internet era is declining in dominance, and America is splintering into more than a dozen news bubbles based on ideology, wealth, jobs, age, and location. That means that where you get your news, the voices you trust, and even the topics and cultural figures you follow could be wholly different from the person sitting next to you.
It's bad.
Blue America, we have a dozen or more Americans and realities.
We all used to get our news from the same sources, three network news broadcasts every night when there were 3 TV channels and Time Magazine and Newsweek. And that was bad because we got the version of reality based on one publisher, Henry Luce, who owned Time and Life magazines, or one reporter, Walter Cronkite. Now we have a zillion. We're all fragmented. And in the next 7.5 months, 32 weeks until the election, we are going to be bombarded with more bullshit than ever before in history as people try to influence what we believe before we vote.
Hey, Nick, are you ready for this? They broke them down into categories, because you're going to love these categories. Apparently, the categories include the Musketeers. This is a fast-growing, mostly male group who feed off Twitter, podcasts, especially All In and Joe Rogan, and follow independent reporters led by Barry Weiss through social media or newsletters. There's the Instagrammers, this is mostly young to middle-aged women in college and the professional class. They're very engaged with this more visual form of journalism and gravitate toward influential voices in the creator economy, including Jessica Yellen, News Not Noise, Bitches News, and Emily and Your Phone, which is done by former Democratic strategist Emily Emick, and then there's others, and then TikTok Kids. This is where most kids get most of their information about the world and hot news topics. They scroll fast and furious through pictures and microbursts. The New Age Grandmas, consumers of news on Facebook, which has been trending older, yet Facebook has deliberately de-emphasized news over the past 3 years, emphasizing what Meta Global Affairs President Nick Clegg calls babies, barbecues, and bar mitzvahs. the right-wing grandpas, that senior citizens, especially men who still flock to Fox News, especially in prime time, they would have been big Rush Limbaugh fans back in the 90s, is what they said. The MAGA mind melders, the new conservative new ecosystem, which would seem like a distant planet to anyone whose habits were formed pre-Trump, and they include people like Charlie Kirk, Jack Bossabeck, and Mike Cernovich. Those are some of the figures, and definitely there's others like Don Jr. and a couple of others. The liberal warriors, and think of Rachel Maddow as the patron saint of this block. It's her high scale ratings. The elite power consumers. This is the Axios base, they say, and this is mainly college-educated, ambitious professionals who estimate 25 million to 45 million nationally, who seek out news nearly daily, partly for passion and partly for professional enhancement. And that group is likely to overlap with other bubbles and lap up Morning Joe. And then the financiers, hey, this is a group right up there in Sasha's category. This is the base of the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, and Deal Books. The nichers, these are professionals who exploit the abundance of high quality in the weed news about their job, industry, or specific profession. And then the last two are the emerging majority. Those are upperly mobile, college-educated Latinos and Black Americans who no longer have Black or bilingual publications to read because, you know, Jet and some of those other ones are gone.
Right. There's a saying. That a lie can travel around the world before the truth can put on its pants.
Right.
The way to find truth in a situation is to triangulate, to look at liberal sources, conservative sources, to see whether nobody has time for that. Once a lie is established, it's there for, you know, a lot of people's mind. We all know that spinach has more iron than any other vegetable, right? Popeye eats it. That's based on a math error 100 years ago. Spinach has no more iron than any other leafy green. We all believe that about spinach. We all believe that a frog will not jump out of boiling water if you turn on. That's bullshit too. We all believe a lot because we don't have time to get to the truth.
Also, a bigger reason is
a new theory. I just came up with a new theory, and maybe if Nick is still here, he can go with my theory and see if he likes my new theory, but if he's in the background. But I just said there are 12 categories. Jacoby, if we get people on that are on all 12 of those categories, then I think Pod TV should just take over the landscape because there are 12 separate categories. So I think we need a show for all 12 categories. So what do you think of my new theory for Pod TV? So one show per of those 12 categories.
That's okay. But the big thing is that not only what Rick said about a lot of the ingrained educational things that we thought were there are ingrained because we've seen that on TV over and over, but also one of the problems that we have today are those silos. And a lot of times the individuals will go on TV or on internet to search for or do their quote unquote research, but they're not actually looking for anything other than confirmation of what they actually believe. So that's a really big problem that we have going on with all the extra internet information that's out there.
That's called confirmation bias. I believe, I have a lunatic belief that Words with Friends gives me bad letters because it doesn't like me. And it's because of confirmation bias. Every time Words with Friends gives me crap letters, I'm like, there, it did it again. But I don't remember all the times it gave me great letters. So
that makes sense. By the way, I know earlier we were talking about our good friend Elon Musk. He's back in the news again because apparently a federal judge in your area, Rick, threw out a lawsuit filed by X because they were going against a hate speech watchdog. So they threw that out on today. So the judge ruled that the lawsuit was intended to punish the Center for Countering Digital Hate for publishing research suggesting that there had been a rise in bigoted speech on the platform since Elon Musk did take over.
Musk is the king of confirmation bias. You know that old clip from I Love Lucy where there's a conveyor belt and she has to shovel candy into her mouth as fast as possible? Yeah, that's Elon Musk with right-wing misinformation. He just gobbles that stuff up and spits it back out at all of X.
And he'll block anybody who disagrees with him and cancel their Tesla order if they disagree with him, a whole bunch of crap. On top of that, I don't know, Mark, did you say it earlier that evidently in one of the trials, Trump just got got an extension of a few more days, and it got slashed. But also the hush money trial starts on April 15th now.
So that got pushed back. Who else?
Well, it didn't get pushed back. His request to get it pushed back, as well as, or just to cancel it, got denied. So the judge yelled at him and said, heck no, we're starting on April 15th.
So it's a race between voters' disgust and the election. We got 224 days until the election. Will the voters get disgusted with Trump in the next 32 weeks? You know, based on these trials, based on these judgments, will they decide all the drama? Because remember, before Trump, we could check the political news maybe once a week, not every few hours, to see what crazy crap had happened. Rick, it was nice to be able to ignore politics.
Rick, isn't the election going to be determined by health and all along those lines? Because I know that a lot of things that I have been reading have been talking about, one, the cognitive abilities of President Biden, but also the cognitive abilities of former President Trump. And there are definitely some people that are saying that he's not doing that well cognitively either. And then, of course, there's a lot of people that are wondering about this twitching leg or something that's going on with his left leg and some things that are happening on his body. So I'm wondering, are we going to be deciding which of these candidates is the least decrepit in order to get them into the White House and everything?
So are we going to be determining this election based on the other side? And it's hard to be objective. You know, like Trump, seems to be like an idiot, but he's always been an idiot. And he gets up there and he rambles for 90 minutes, 2 hours. But to be able to get up there at age almost 78, to be able to speak extemporaneously, even though it's all BS, for 2 hours, is that's not the easiest thing in the world.
Let's not really give him that much credit if you think about what he's actually saying, because when he's making noises and performing, standing up for 2 hours, just like both of them have done, there's a big difference in standing up for 2 hours and making sense, and standing up for 2 hours and going bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, bong, bing. Big difference.
Right, but like my late mother-in-law always said a lot of nonsense. Her whole adult life, nonsense. So when she started declining, it was hard to tell. Same with Trump, who's always just been full of crap. Is this a decline, or is it just him still being his same like dumb self? It's and people are going to just plug in their own biases about that.
I would like to say earlier, somebody said that you have to follow news now for like every few hours. I'll tell you probably maybe every 15 minutes, because it's just in that actually trial for this illegal payments to Stormy Daniels and so on, it will actually start finally on April 15th. No more delays. Selection of jury will start on that day, and so hopefully when other trials will start, he will be already on the record as a convicted criminal. So other trials will be so much easier to prove. Now, what I'm surprised though is that his defense, the easiest defense against all these sexual allegations, he could have said that he just couldn't get an erection, therefore he could not rape all these women, and therefore what about money? Well, he paid Michael Cohen for his legal help with different matters, so on. It was his lawyer at the time. Okay, now on the other hand, that will play unfavorably to his image as a macho man. So he is proudly saying, okay, not only he has his much younger wife Melanie, but he has a bunch of other women who were having consensual sex with him, or he was paying them for sex, or whatever else. So that elevates, in his opinion, his image as a macho man. And that's what American wants to have, a macho man who has all kind of sexual relationships and rapes and just name it. And the only thing is, it's unclear how American women, especially in states which are not leaning toward the Republicans, how they will take that.
Didn't we try that Macho Man thing?
Hold on. This is why Joe and Jill Biden need to leak a sex tape before the election.
No, that's what they need to do. But I don't know that people really want to see that. That might be a scary thought. You know, a lot of times people don't want to see their grandparents involved in sexual relationships.
Want to see that sex tape?
Say what?
Yeah, nobody wants to see that sex tape. Nobody. That's nasty.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people do not want to see that one. That would be very scary and all along those lines. And even to what Sasha was saying, there's a couple of things I was going to ask him and everything. But I do remember that there was this notion of the Macho Man. I do remember the whole notion it was involved in wrestling and some other things of the older culture and all in that space. And I even remember the Marlboro Man, for those folks that remember smoking cigarettes and all along those lines, where they tried to play off the Macho Man. And I don't know that the quote unquote Macho Man is as popular as he used to be and everything. So I'm not sure that it would play in certain communities because it doesn't have the same merits that it used to. That's just my assessment and all in that way. I don't know if folks on the panel agree or disagree. But my question for you, Sasha, and I kind of alluded to it on World Edition, and I knew they were going to go this direction, is that speaking of folks trying to change the media narrative, because we had definitely heard reports about that Russian concert and the attack, and it had been even ISIS itself had come out and said that they were the ones that were to blame and everything. But now we're seeing Russian media saying that it was a Ukrainian attack. And I'm going like, wait a minute, that's not what y'all said the first time. So what is your take on this? Because now apparently they're trying to shift the blame to Ukraine and saying that they launched the attack that killed all those people. And that is now coming out in Russian media, which we know is heavily influenced and controlled by Mr. Putin over there. But what is your take as they are trying to shift their narrative and shift the blame to Ukraine?
They've done it many times in the past, and they are going to do it many times in the future, as long as Putin is at power. And don't forget that their first war against the Chechen Republic started when FSB, which is a continuation of KGB, they had 4 buildings, the apartment buildings in Moscow and the regions, they were all blown apart in 1999, and several hundred people perished in this murderous act. So same thing is here. Okay, all this IGIL and all this, whoever did that, they were all trained by KGB, by FSB, and now they're going to put blame on Kiev, on Ukraine, and already all major Western news agencies already proven that this is not the fact. The Ukrainians denied anything to do with this, but it doesn't matter. That's what suits them. That was the only reason why this attack took place at all.
The Russia, for 150 years, Russia has had a push to release propaganda. In the 19th century, they built a fake village that looked really nice, called a Potemkin village. And they've been bombarding the U.S. with propaganda for a century.
It was not 1819; it was 18th century when Queen Elizabeth, when she was touring this region, and Potemkin was putting little villages and bringing them over to the next stop of the Queen. That's what he was doing.
So really Russia will that's their tradition. They have
their tradition.
They're great at BS.
Speaking of tradition and BS, there is a notion, I've brought it up on this show before, I'll bring it up again at this particular time. What is our thoughts around the notion of political prisoners? Do they exist in the United States? Because I actually personally think that they do. And I can think of someone like Leonard Peltier, an Indian activist, and the gentleman that was part of MOVE that I consider to be political prisoners. But I do know that some of our Eastern enemy states, for lack of a better term, that is something that they push, is that even some of our prison system is vastly overrepresented in certain minority communities, and that there might be actual political prisoners within our system as well. What is your thoughts around that?
2 million people imprisoned in the U.S., and like the war on drugs, you could consider a political war, where in the 90s, we imprisoned people for crack for much longer, which is the black people version of cocaine. Then the penalties for crack were much more than the white person version of cocaine is just, powder you sniff up your nose, and the penalties for crack, 10 times as long as for nose cocaine.
Yeah, Oregon tried to decriminalize drugs and found they were just, their system was overwhelmed, so they put the criminal laws back in. I think there's a way they can do something in between, and in other words, create mental health courts for the people that are overdosing and on drugs that they're not prescribed by their medical physician. But so if you go to one extreme, everybody goes to jail, that doesn't work. If you go to another extreme, everybody gets a pass, that doesn't work. But there's probably some middle ground which you can treat the people that have drugs differently than just criminals. In other words, people that have serious mental issues.
Nick, is it part of the problem? Is it part of the problem? I know this is the media show, but is it part of the problem that you can't really get rid of the drugs unless you get rid of the distribution points? And I am not convinced that the cartel and some of the places that we are placing as the ultimate distribution points are the ultimate distribution points, because even if you look at Compton, or if you look at Harlem, then I don't know many people that live there that have planes. So I'm thinking that there's got to be some complicity within certain organizations in order for them.
Yeah, but rather than do that, Mark, regulate and tax is always a better policy, because then the government makes money on the drugs as opposed to making just illegal. You go to jail, make it legal, but tax them. In other words,
we made the cartels via the war on drugs
for rehabilitation. What, Rick?
We made we created the cartels via, Nixon started the war on drugs, right? So that's
the best way to get rid of the cartels is to legalize drugs and tax them, and then the cartels fall apart. They just don't. They had the same thing with prohibition. Prohibition created all these crazy mafioso people, but the minute it was legal, then all of a sudden all the illegal activities went away, and they started taxing, liquor, and liquor is just as bad as a lot of those. And Adam Lamparero says, "Happy birthday, Sasha." So yes, that's pretty good. But there are solutions to these problems, and unfortunately, we always think you got to take a hammer to it or you take a soft bed to it, but there's something in between that actually makes sense. Getting back to Donald Trump, okay. Real question that we have, is he going to be electable in the next 6 months or not? In other words, where's he going to go with all his trials and his mayhem? Is he going to fold, or is he going to actually be the president of the United States? If he is the president of the United States, I'll enjoy my villa in Spain. I'll say hello on the Pod TV network from Spain. I'll still keep a place here, but I'm going to have a place over there looking over the Costa del Sol or Costa Blanca. But if he, because this way I don't have to listen to him. I mean, can you imagine the mental health drain on the Americans having to listen to Donald Trump for 4 more years and having to listen to all the crazies for 4 more years? No, I'm not going to listen.
I lost 20 pounds under Trump because I had to write jokes, political jokes, right? So I was sensitized to politics already, and then Trump gets elected, and having to pay attention to him freaked out my digestive system. And I spent 4 years just pooping uncontrollably, and I lost a ton of weight. I'm all skinny now. I used to be a man. Now I'm
I noticed that in Europe they don't report it. See, the real problem over here, it's almost like you can't get away from them. Part of the reason I moved to this golf course community, I was in a townhome and I was pretty happy with it. It's a townhouse, 3 stories, not a bad deal. But our homeowners association had crazies on it. I mean, they wanted to regulate everything. You had to have a rule to open up your window. And I said, dude, I can live anywhere. I don't need to deal with your garbage. So I sold it and I moved over here, because it's good for your mental health not to live with crazies.
Speaking of living with crazies,
and so if this crazy gets elected,
but
I'm going to be on my seaside villa in Spain, baby.
No, I hear you. But speaking of living with crazies, and y'all know I came from the media field and everything.
When he gets out, I'll come back.
Speaking of crazies, and this actually came from London because it was actually from The Guardian, and I want to just share a part of this article and then hear y'all's response to it. But The Guardian put up this article that says that as the election battle between Donald Trump and Joe Biden begins, there are growing fears around the health of the U.S. news media, which has been struck by job losses, decline in circulations, and the closure of closure or crippling of well-known brands and the rise of news threats, such as something that Rick talks about, which is fake or AI generated information on social media. So last year, more than 21,400 media jobs were lost, the highest since 2020.
It's going to happen anyway.
16,060 were recorded when print was still in the process of being succeeded by digital news distribution.
Yeah.
And definitely it looks like readership and income from digital production has been falling overall, and industry downsizing in 2024 appears to be accelerating. And meanwhile, social media is uncoupling as a referral service to news organizations, which hits both readership size and revenue generation. So it looks like even Meta has dropped its news tab from Facebook, and Google is more unpredictable, and X has deprioritized posts that contain outside referrals. So what are our thoughts about this? Because I know we were talking with Rex about TikToks, and the share of U.S. adults who said that they regularly get news from TikTok has more than quadrupled from 3% in 2020 to 14% in 2023, said. And of course, they're subject to accusations of viral misinformation and intentional viral manipulation. But what are our thoughts? It looks like more people are going toward digital and less people are reading their paper, and some people are just like, God, people all together.
That's been a trend going on for a long time. When I was at the NAPD meeting, that was the big thing, is that streaming media, which we're on, we have, if you look at what we have, I have it below here, we have 4 channels that run 24/7 on Roku television: travel, sports, entertainment, politics, and a live channel. 4 channels. That's more. When I grew up, when I was a kid, we only had 3 channels, and they didn't run 24/7. They were off. So what's happening is streaming media is taking over. Social media is taking over. Traditional media is getting their rear handed to them. And there's no way they can stop it. Neither political party can stop it. The only thing they can do is slow it down, or they can put roadblocks like we're going to do with TikTok. TikTok may be off the air, as far as we know, in the next 6 months. But in terms of the media and print media has been going down the toilet.
It's a broken business. There's no way to be solvent in print media anymore.
You can't. You're right, Rick. You can't. In other words, the thing is, there's going to be a couple of them, like the New York Times and USA Today. Maybe the LA Times will hang on. All the other ones, I mean, I contribute to our local media, the Raleigh News Observer.
Don't you have to go the Look model? And if those remember the magazine Look, because there are a couple of magazines, including some here.
Life magazine.
And when I'm saying Look, they have a lot of pictures, and they become more picture oriented and less.
Yeah.
When was the last time you bought when did you buy a copy of Look or Life magazine?
No, I'm just saying, but I get like the Durham magazine, and I'm saying Durham magazine is very much of a photo-based magazine. So a lot of the articles are more photo pictures of things that are going on in the community. They may have an article here or two. That's kind of the model that I was going at, because I know that there's some of those magazines
are largely done
in LA.
Yeah, magazines are dead. Print media is dead. There are certain ones that will survive because they're funded by the government, and that's going to be it. And the majors look like they're going to survive, decreasing in viewership, though, and they have no ability to expand. I think that you're going to see a big overhaul. See, we at least, Mark, we have ability to expand internationally as well as domestically. These other ones, they don't, because they're just starting to move over to streaming. And like I said, even the majors in Europe, CBS has like no footprints over there. They're just starting.
But Nick, one of the things you push against, and I brought it up on the other show, is you sometimes push against the notion of people having access to the internet. And one of the things that they talk about, even the UNC School of Journalism talks about this notion of news deserts, which is a community either rural or urban, which has limited access to the sort of credible and comprehensive news and information that feeds democracy at the lowest level and everything, the grassroots level. So if we don't have internet in some of these rural areas, or we don't have these kind of media outlets, it can even be a Facebook group. Because I know in the town that I grew up in, there are some people that have like some digital media presence and everything in that space. But if we don't have that, then you're going to be even in a greater situation.
They have it available on their mobile phones. As a matter of fact, that's one funny thing about when I look at our demographics, Mark, most of the people that watch the Pod TV network aren't watching on television. They're watching on their desktop or mobile phones. And it shocks me that you get like, almost 1 million of the 2 million people watch us on their mobile phones. But then I have to admit, I actually watch your shows on mobile phones too. So the mobile phone is really going to be the communication source, then desktop, and then traditional television is way down there in third place, and it hasn't moved up very much.
No, it hasn't moved up there and everything. Just really quick, because I know we've only got a few more minutes to go, but I've got to have a question because it's something that Sasha talks about all the time, and I'd love to hear his thoughts about it because he sometimes wonders about the election. You kind of alluded to it, Nick, as to whether Trump will get elected. I know that Sasha is of the opinion that he can't get elected, but apparently a third of the U.S. voters say that they are satisfied with the people who will be running for president, which means that 65% are not satisfied, and all along those lines. So I was just wondering your thoughts when there are this high amount of people that are not liking either one of the candidates and wish that we could get somebody else. And do you still hold that, even though it's several months away, that there is no way in the backside of hell that that former President Trump is getting elected and everything? So I just wondering your take on that and everything, because you're the one that has oftentimes said that, he may have his core group, but the independents will come across and vote for Mr. Biden. But your take, Sasha?
It's very simple. If the country has been defeated in a war, or if the country is broken, then they have to accept sometimes one, not the best choices, but one of two bad choices. And one of them is very bad, and one of them just quite bad. And that the same thing is what's happening in America. America is so divided, it's broken up, and therefore it has two bad choices. Biden and Trump, they are two of the most hated politicians in modern America, and one of them will end up as a president. So what is the least evil for the United States? That's what they have to decide in November. It's not whom they love, not who is the best, but to decide who is the least evil. That's all.
And Trump's approval has remained steady since 2015 at about 40%, with 55% disapproval. And so it's likely that Trump will lose this election by about the same margin that he lost in 2020. And the whole question is whether he can win the Electoral College, even though he lost the popular vote by 5 to 9 million. And I keep making a lot of little bets on Biden because you get good odds when you bet on Biden.
Really?
He's not a lot. You still get every buck.
I was going to say Biden. They're not running even. You actually get
no. Trump is still favored. Trump is at about 60% chance of winning, and Biden's at 40%. When I think in reality, Biden probably has a 70% chance of getting reelected. So anytime you get that much of a discrepancy, make those bets.
Wow. I would think they're more even odds because the last several elections have been really close between the Democrats and the Republicans. And I also agree with Sasha that what will happen, you're going to go to the polls and you're going to have a choice, bad or worse, and you're not going to vote for worse. So, that gives
every election there hasn't been a non-close. The last time a presidential candidate got more than 53% of the vote was 1988, that they've all been close. But the Republicans have only won the popular vote once since 1988.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are some things I agree with on the Republican side of what they're doing. But then but their leader is a nut. I mean, the thing is, it'd be nice if they actually could get rid of him and bring in somebody who's good. But good people just tend to stay away from politics. We actually have a pretty good governor here, but they're low key, they're not crazy, and they don't attract a lot of media attention. See, Trump is crazy and he's high key, so he gets a lot of media attention. Biden has just been around since the dawn of man.
The job is miserable now. You have Republicans retiring from Congress early because they're disgusted with what it takes to do the job in Congress.
Well, that's because they probably can't do their job. In other words, what they came to do they find out after a while they can't do it. So they just get upset and they leave.
I mean,
we've got another guy leaving next month on the Republican side.
But isn't that part of the problem with the job in general is because I remember one of the things that they said about both Trump and Obama is that they were outsiders. And a lot of times when outsiders come in, they have to learn the tricks of the game. And one of the tricks of the game is playing effective politicking and all along those lines. And I don't know if you come from community organizing, or if you come from supposedly a business background or a television background, which is what Trump came from. Community organizing would have been former President Obama and everything, that you are prepared for all of the nuances of what you have to go through. And sometimes they oftentimes get frustrated. I personally think that that's what happened to Carter, and to some degree what probably even happened to Reagan as well. But I think there's a lot of times they do not know what they are getting into at the time they get into it.
Yeah, but let's get real on Donald Trump. He's really not a businessman. You know, he's not self-made. He inherited a bunch of money. He did not vet himself through any major companies whatsoever. You know, a company was turned over to him, you know, with a golden key. And so he basically is unvetted. The only thing he did well was actually his reality TV show. So he's kind of like a showman. He's like a P.T. Barnum. But
and
really,
he was scripted there too. The best lines were written for him. It wasn't his.
Yeah, because he can't. I'm not sure if he can read, but I'm very grateful he was able to deliver his one line really well. And then all of a sudden, does that qualify you to run a country when you can't even run a casino? Talk to me. How do you take a casino bankrupt? I mean, you always have the house's edge everywhere you go. He can't run an airline.
Those are supposed to be fail-safe businesses.
The only thing he can run is real estate, and he lies on all his applications. So if you look at him,
what he didn't make much money off of real estate. What he made money off of is selling his name when his name meant classy and elegant to people who didn't know better. At one point,
not only did he not make money on real estate, he pissed off a lot of people in real estate as well. A lot of people sued him because of the way that his buildings were run and the kind of things that he were doing. Because in a lot of ways, he was an absentee landlord to a lot of folks, and a lot of folks were very upset at him.
He's been involved in 4,900 lawsuits. At one point, there were 17 Trump buildings in New York City. He only owned 3 of them. The rest, people paid him to be able to put Trump on a building.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing is, I think there was the Four Seasons that Bill Gates owns, and it owns a lot of hotels. Well, not really. The Four Seasons owns no hotels. It's just a marketing name, seriously. And like the most hotels that are rooms are sold in America own no hotels. That's hotels.com.
So there's a lot of things that are in name only, and a lot of businesses are not owned by. Yeah, they have the naming rights and a lot of things. I mean, even if you look at a lot of the sports arenas, you will see that they have certain corporations that are named after them, and all along those lines. And a lot of times they are not even having a heavy presence there. Like, I don't know, even though I did get to go to a game few years back at Bank of America Stadium, which is the stadium at Charlotte that the Panthers play at. But how active is the Bank of America actually in the stadium? I would argue probably that much.
They buy naming rights. But you know, one thing that was said a long time ago, which I still think is true today, Donald Trump is what a poor man's idea what a rich man looks like. Seriously, because I spent half my career working with very wealthy people as an estate planning attorney. My clients were the founder of Dunkin' Donuts. My clients were the founding family of Coca-Cola, the president of Bausch & Lomb, the president of Kimberly-Clark, the president of Philip Morris. None of them acted like Trump, and they all had a lot more money than Trump.
Well, speaking of naming rights, because I know we're winding down and everything, because this actually came up because you mentioned with the money you get, you mentioned the money that we get and everything. What is our thoughts, and we can bring this up on a future media show and everything, but what are our thoughts when there are organizations that have naming rights and then they get in trouble and everything? Because I know that there were some of the universities that are now having people that want their names off of them because they were Confederate folks and everything. And even at the Hague Center, which I alluded to earlier, there is a picture of Mr. Duke that is up in one of our stained glasses, and there is a dedication to Julian Carr, who is a known Klansman. This is an African-American cultural artist.
Really?
But definitely there are people that want to take those names off, even though the family gave money, which is why the names are still there and everything. So what is your thoughts around this notion of people that want to take off names because of the nature of the names?
That's up to them. I mean, it's really up to their own individual conscience, what the heck they want to do when it comes to that. I mean, the history of America is an unfortunate history, as I said. Like I said, my ancestor, who was a royal, actually from Scotland, but was the direct descendant of King Edward II of England, came over as an indentured servant because the royals lost the Battle of Dunbar. And so they came to the United States. And the first thing they did to get over here, indentured servant, and had to serve for 7 years. So I don't have much sympathy for the other immigrants here that they pay 10 grand to come in. If they don't pay 10 grand, they can borrow the money. I don't care how they get it. And then you open the doors up like they do in Europe. You have golden visas, you have visas, but you all pay. You don't walk in for free. Okay, this whole idea you're going to walk through that border for free ain't happening. You can't walk through Disneyland or Disney World for free. It's like $1,000 a day. You don't get to this country for free, and we need to send that message to all the people around the world. Yeah, you can come in, but you better have your 10 grand with you and deposit it to the U.S. Treasury on your way in the door. If not, go back home, go get your 10 grand, go borrow, beg, steal. I don't care. But if you don't bring money into the Tilly, out you go, baby. This is the USA.
We're canceling all the founding fathers for being slave owners. I wonder what happens 50 years. I wonder if all of us will be canceled in the future because we ate meat. You know, I'm responsible for the deaths of 1,000 chickens. You know, I don't know how many cows and pigs, and those animals live under horrible conditions, and the future might hate us for that.
I totally agree. The book Animal House? Wasn't that the animals getting revenge on us? If you go back to that old classic novels and everything, I think both Animal's House and Charlotte's Web were about the animals getting revenge on us.
That's true, and they will get their revenge. In the meantime, we're gonna have to get off the air because otherwise our engineers say you went over an hour. Anyway, we'll see you next week.
We do have our timeshare show as well. That's coming up next.
Timeshare show coming up. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.